Hey folks, Steve here with another special unboxing video for you today. It's just like second Christmas when a GMT package arrives with more than one game. In this video, we're going to be unboxing the brand new game Tanto Monta, The Rise of Ferdinand and Isabella, 1470 to 1560. And just to kind of help put this game into context, in case you've somehow not heard of it, it is in the lineage of Here I Stand and Virgin Queen, two very, very good games that have come out from the same designer. This is, I guess, if you could say Here I Stand's the original, with Virgin Queen as the sequel, because Virgin Queen takes place in the sort of next batch of 60, 70 years after Here I Stand. This game is the prequel, so to speak, in that it covers the time period up until Here I Stand, and has a greater focus on southern France, Spain, and northwestern Africa, as we'll see here. So I have high expectations for this one, if only because Here I Stand is probably one of the greatest games of all time, and I feel it is not an exaggeration to say that. Here I Stand is very, very good. And Virgin Queen is also very, very good. It is different from Here I Stand. It does different sorts of things in a more complex way, and sometimes that makes it feel like it's not as tight as Here I Stand, but it's still a very, very good game. So, what could the third game be like? Is it going to be as tight as the original Here I Stand? Is it going to provide a lot of additional options the way that Virgin Queen did? Who knows? I don't know. We're going to find out over time. Now, this is certainly a multiplayer game, a game that would see play at conventions. It's very hard to solo, so I don't know how much I'll be able to show of this game on the channel in the long term, but I certainly hope to be able to play this in the near future. Let's take a look. The box is a thicker box type from GMT. It is a big game, and even the back is kind of stylized here a little bit. You can read all of that if you so choose, but you can see a good chunk of the map is already right there with a focus on Spain, again, Northern Africa. We're going to have a mounted map. We're going to have a whole bunch of playing cards. This is a card-driven game, a multiplayer card-driven game. 4-player cards, because it does play 4 players. Exactly 4 players, no more, no less, which is a bit disappointing, because it'd be nice to be able to play with some other number, but so it goes. As they point out here, for those familiar with Here I Stand, the rulebook, over half of the rulebook remains unchanged, but there's going to be different types of things there that we have to accommodate, which is what you would expect anyhow. All sorts of charts, 6 counter sheets, which is, I guess, as many as I was expecting or thinking it would be. Rulebook, scenario book, 12 6-sided dice. So there you go. For ages 14 and over. Solitaire, low. You would be having to play hidden hands for 4 different players and splitting your brain into 4 different people, and that's hard. Now what's interesting is this is saying 3 to 7 hours. GMT doesn't always put these on here, and you'll note that not every game does. The fact they're saying 3 to 7 hours is interesting. I would expect for a first play you're probably looking at 7 hours on the long end of that. I would be surprised if you could bang it out in 3. So I don't know. Maybe this is a shorter game. Fewer players, fewer decisions, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to be too presumptive with this, because this will be a whole new game experience. So I'm going to work to get this shrink wrap off. Yeah, I've been tracking this one for a little while, because, again, it has a pedigree that leads to reasonably high expectations. And maybe that's not fair to any game to have too high of expectations, but that's where we're at with this one. All right. So we have the rule book. I'm going to go ahead and say it's going to be 2-column format, color, and non-glossy paper. So if you're interested in understanding what all the rules encompass here, you can see there's try to focus this a little bit better. There we go. Military units, cards and resources, the card draw phase. There is a diplomacy phase. That's where you get up off the table and you go chatting to people about what you want to do. Control and unrest, movement, field battle, siege. All basic things from Here I Stand that I'm familiar with. Naval affairs, probably not too different. Construction, the winter phase, where all sorts of things can potentially happen. Royal weddings. So that is something that is from Virgin Queen that they had added, where you could marry off your monarchs. So we'll see a return of that potentially, though. To what degree, that will be interesting. Major powers. So again, I'm going to fight with my focus here a little bit. The Kingdom of Granada. I'm not sure the best way to pronounce that, unfortunately. North African Alliance, Portugal, Beltranejos, Castile, Aragon, France, Catalonia. There's also foreign war cards, which should be familiar to folks. Minors and independence, there'll be a variety of those, and then victory. Now, what's always been a sort of routine part of this series, now that it is a proper series with 3 games, is that each faction is going to tend to have different ways to win or get victory points, rather. There's now strategic spaces. So this is something new where you mark with a triangular marker. So that's maybe a bit different than maybe what we're used to seeing. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays into things. And so, and we'll get this when we get to the player aid charts, you having a little command deck, a little command center for yourself to show what markers have been placed, what victory points you're accruing. That's all very helpful. You can see, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the mechanics. I feel like these mechanics are kind of well known at this point. If you're unfamiliar, there's a lot of ways you can learn how to play Here I Stand, at least, and I would highly recommend that because it is a really great game. But again, this feels very much in the same vein. Now, the dynamics are going to be very different, I suspect. So the depth of this will be interesting to see just how it fleshes out, because there's a lot of rules to this game, by the way. So if you can't tell, there's not as many pictures as I was hoping to see, if only because this game is, if it's anything like Here I Stand, it is involved. There's a variety of different mechanics, and you need to be able to make sense of everything in aggregate. So if you're going to play even this for the first time, give yourself time to read the rulebook well in advance of showing up to a convention to play this, truly. So there's different, you can do exploration, cartography. There's a way to get some victory points for that. This game provides a lot of weird opportunity, like not weird, but it's not just a war game. And you might even say it's not, strictly speaking, a war game. Because you can certainly get victory points from fighting wars, but you can get victory points for a variety of other things, like exploration. If it's anything like Here I Stand, each power may have additional special ways to get those victory points. I see there's caravan resources, so that's something new. Lots of tables. You can see there's lots of these additional tables, and when you roll on them, you're going to get maybe some additional resources. You're going to get different benefits. If you like tables and die rolls, then these games are for you. Royal weddings. So we start to see, bride and groom. Okay. And in this example, they have Isabella and, what is that? Alfonso of Portugal. And now we get into talking about the major powers. Okay, so if the Muslim player gets control of Gibraltar, then they'll get some additional victory points. So this gets into that asymmetry. Each faction is going to have different things it may want to focus on to get them additional victory points. Sometimes somewhat independent of other players, sometimes in direct opposition. So here's where we get some additional pictures and explanation, which is going to be very good to review. Yeah, this is the kind of thing I was looking for. So they do have that in here. I suspect there's going to be more example of play stuff in the playbook if it's anything like other games in the series. So if you're going to be playing this at a convention, obviously you need to read all the rules to have an idea of how the game works, and then you definitely at least want to be reading about the power that you're going to be playing. If you're going to be Portugal, make sure you really read the Portugal section so you know how to play and do the things you're going to need to do. Very dense. So you see how many paragraphs there are, paragraphs and paragraphs of rules. So this is not for the faint of heart. I will say that. But once you get used to playing a game of this caliber, it's one that you'll want to play again and again and get better at it and become, a shark at convention play and all of that. So nothing surprising here. I think it's exactly in line with what I was expecting. Any more pictures would have added to the page count. The rules are dense. Just make sure you read them and make sense of that. Now we have the scenario book, which is also fairly large. But you can see the breakout here about this book. And 2 scenarios. There's a 7-turn scenario. There's a 4-turn scenario. With a decent example of play running what looks like 7 pages. There's designer notes. Their game is history. That's always a joy to read. Absolutely love it. Because it describes the history of the period in game terms. Like, oh, this card happened here and did this. Notable battles, characters. So, you really only need the first couple of sections of this playbook to play the game. But you're almost certainly going to want to, and this gives you all the setup information, you're almost certainly going to want to read more of what's in here so that you can appreciate how everything works together, how things are expected to operate, and yeah, now we've got tons and tons of pictures to enjoy here. I think this will be one of the first things I'll read because the example of play tends to really help set the framing of what the game is supposed to play like, even if you don't know the rules. Tactics for each player, so that's going to help if you just don't even know how to begin to do well in the game. Looks like there's a lot of that in here, accompanied by period pictures, which is always appreciated. That's going to be the thing here. So Tanto Monta includes new unit types. So in the past, it was always just you had regulars, you had mercenaries, or you just had units in general, and then you would have mercenaries. Here, they're actually having cavalry be a distinct unit. They're having siege artillery as a distinct unit, which adds a little more fidelity than what you would see in maybe Here I Stand, which is interesting. And yeah, I'm definitely going to be reading the game as history very soon. Always useful to see, they do it turn by turn, right? Here's what happens on turn 3, every year of that period, what happened. What are the cards or what are the significant events that maybe would have been played during that time period? And, gosh, if you wanted to, you could read this section, read the Here I Stand section that has something very similar in Virgin Queen and kind of have a little mini primer of several hundred years of European history there. All historical detail stuff here. I love that stuff. I mean, that's half the fun of getting a new game is getting to read some of these historical things because you can't it's hard to own a book on every subject, but somehow it's easier to have a game on every subject, and you get a little bit of learning through that along the way. Now the rest of this is going to be all the player aid stuff. So we see a diplomatic influence table helping you to track what the situation is across powers. Here's the French player aid card, which each faction, I guess, is getting their own player aid card. That's good and can help you see what are the special VP that you can get. That's nice. That's useful. Same thing. Muslim player, your 2 different powers you'll control. Portuguese player. Spanish player. And then this is always fun. Does your board game come with a dynastic alliance chart? You can see all that as well. More stuff that is easier to handle as a player aid. Table sheets. These are your extra tables for various things that you may need to be rolling on as the game progresses. And I suspect that there's 4 copies of that. There is. Here's your player card. So this is what you would have out in front of you. These are a bit bigger than the Here I Stand ones. So you're going to have home cards. These are special cards that you have that allow you to do special things. Your current ruler card, and you may end up with a card in the deck that replaces that leader, so you'd put the card on top, and various holding boxes for various different things, as well as all the different types of actions you can perform and the card cost to do them. So it's nice to see that they're that big. This may mean you need more table space than you might think. These games do tend to take a huge amount of table space. That's just part of the picture, part of the experience is these big thing, Catholic monarchs. And then the counter sheets, and I was expecting this as well. These are not your typical counter sheets. These are the truly punch counters, like the you're just going to go bam, 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 sticking your thumb through these holes, getting these units out of here. It's all brown core, all high quality stuff here, showing your units, your naval units, various markers. So there's going to be 6 of these. Not much to talk about in terms of registration. They all look good, all look typical. I'm about to punch out a unit. Don't do that. So these things are going to come out pretty easy. Again, what you're probably going to want to really be careful of when you go to punch this is that you do have your baggies ready for sorting, because you're going to end up with a very large pile of lots of different types of counters that all have very specific game purposes. And cleanup will always be tricky with these games because you have just so much stuff to keep track of. And then, okay, so there is at least one counter sheet that is like a normal counter sheet you would expect from GMT. That is all the much smaller counters. There's a lot of these, a lot. So a lot of prep work to keep this organized when you get to that point. Now, we're going to look at the map. What I'm going to try to do here is clean up some of these charts and things so it's easy to get that map out. This is, it is mounted. You see, that's cute. Variety of colors for the dice. As you can see, we do have a box insert. We have baggies. We do have the cards. Now, I'm not going to break out all the cards just because there's a lot of them and I want to get them reorganized. You can see there's, like, you get card points. There's an event. So you're going to play a card for an event, or you're going to use the card points to do a variety of actions. You can do more than one type of action. And this is an example of a home card. It is a card that the Muslim player will have to do a very specific set of things on a somewhat regular basis, because you're always going to have access to your home cards. So lots of cards. This is a combined deck game, so you're going to have, each player is going to have home cards, and then you're all drawing from one big deck that may have certain cards restricted by year. So if it's anything like its sibling games, there'll be some cards that are held outside and are added to the deck over time. We'll see how that goes. All right, let's take a look at the map quickly here. Again, mounted map. It's the nice mounted map. Now, this is going to be a brand new map, which means there's going to be some pooching and counter bending that you may want to do, or use plexi to flatten it out. But just so you see the whole of what we're dealing with here, we are dealing with Spain, Portugal, France. Italy is on the map. All of Italy is on the map, though largely in a minor power format, though Aragon has Sicily and some other territories here. Venice, Genoa. And then you have the powers in Africa, and that distinction again between a normal space, a key space, a strategic resource space, a fortress space, which are relatively straightforward in displaying. And then in addition to that, we're not quite on the scale of exploration that was being done in Here I Stand or Virgin Queen, but we do have a sub map for the Canary Islands, a variety of spaces there, as well as a more broad spanning world map showing just the very early discovery of uh, Cuba, South America, various regions of Africa, and then even heading out to uh, Indonesia. That is, for I suspect for trade-related purposes, overseas voyages, different things. So I've always appreciated that about this game series, that you have sort of the European affairs that you deal with, but you still have things that are going on in the rest of the world, and we are talking about what are ultimately colonial powers and empires that are seeking to expand their influence, and that's going to matter in the game as well, to some degree. I'm not sure exactly how important these will be. I do know that in Here I Stand, exploration and colonies were very important, so I suspect they will at least hold some level of importance in this game as well. So that is the unboxing of Tanto Monta. I have high hopes for this. I think this will be another game. Maybe the one trick of this is going to be, the question could be, why play this if you can play Here I Stand or play Virgin Queen? And I think maybe the answer will be that this might be your better selected game if you can only get 4 people. If you have 5 or 6, then yeah, Here I Stand, maybe Napoleonic Wars, maybe Virgin Queen as a bigger multiplayer CDG game. Those are going to be obvious choices. If you can't get all the way to 6, and you've got 4, then this will be much uh, easier to make work, because when you play Virgin Queen or Here I Stand with less than 6 players, there's there's some level of excuse me, weirdness there that gets baked in terms of players controlling multiple powers. And it's just not quite the same experience. If this is built for 4, intended for 4, and you have 4, then that's a great option. So maybe you lug around each of these games in your trunk of your car to the convention, and somebody wants to do a pickup game of Tanto Monta, you're going to be ready to go. Yeah, so I think that'll do it for this video, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it was informative to help you understand what is in the package. This is a major game, and by major I mean like it requires time from you to play. So if this is something that interests you, it's worth a shot, I suspect. Given the game pedigree here, given its place in the series itself. I will say, I may need to correct myself a little bit. Ed Beach helped develop this game, but let's give the game designer his due. Carlos Diaz, Narvaez, is the designer. Ed Beach supported the design, but was not the primary designer of this game. But again, part of a much bigger series that does a lot of interesting things. Takes up a lot of time, but I tell you, the juice is worth the squeeze. At least it has been for its sibling games. I suspect it will be for this as well. So thanks for watching, folks. Take care. Keep gaming. See you in the next one.